The ash hung thick in the air, stirred by the rhythmic march of armor boots crunching broken glass and shattered stone. The alien soldiers of the Galactic Coalition swept through the skeletal remains of what had once been New Boston. Their exosuits gleamed beneath the pale, broken light of Earth's decimated sky, alloyed armor pulsing with soft blue energy. Laughter, harsh, guttural, alien, echoed between the empty buildings, mocking in tone and dismissive in spirit. "Primitive world," scoffed Commander Jarkle, a towering Vuxari with scaled skin like volcanic rock. "They sent us here for this? For ruins and shadows." His lieutenant, a sleek-furred Kelnari, flicked his tail lazily. The humans fled, or starved. Their weapons? Obsolete, ballistics, lead and powder. He mimed firing a rifle with exaggerated recoil, eliciting another round of laughter from the patrol. They didn't fear what remained of Earth. They saw only a crippled species, scattered and silent. Their confidence was earned from centuries of conquest, entire systems subjugated with orbital bombardments and genetic suppression. Earth was meant to be a footnote, not a battlefield. Far above them, in the crumbling belfry of an ancient cathedral, a man lay prone beneath a patchwork cloak of thermal-deflective mesh and old church dust. Sergeant Eric Thorne's breath was slow and even his heart rate steady. The targeting scope of his rifle, human-manufactured, alien-enhanced, tracked each step of patrol below. He adjusted for wind, recalibrated for drift. His finger rested lightly against the trigger, not trembling, not uncertain. He hadn't spoken a word in 3 days. A HUD flickered softly against the inside of his visor. 4 targets. Widespread. Armor type. 3. Weak points at neck seams and ocular ports. Eric blinked once to confirm. The rifle's AI synced with his neural implant, calculating probability curves. 98% kill rate. It wasn't high enough. He watched them laugh, their postures loose, weapons slung low. They thought they were safe. They always did at first. That was a mistake. He exhaled, and then he fired. The first shot didn't make a sound. A whisper of displaced air was all that marked its passage as the round tore through Commander Jarkle's cranial node. The alien's laughter ended mid-chuckle. His body collapsed in silence, the armor hissing as it vented fluid and heat. The rest froze. The second shot landed less than a breath later, catching the Kelnari mid-step. He dropped without even a yelp. 2 others panicked, spinning wildly, shouting in their native tongues. They fired wildly into the broken skyline, blue plasma bursts cracking shattered windows and melting chunks of old steel. But Eric was already gone, sliding backward into the cathedral's shadows, rifle tucked tight to his chest. He moved like water, controlled, silent, fluid, disappearing through a narrow shaft hidden behind a half-burned altar. Underground, he followed a mapped-out series of collapsed tunnels and storm drains. This city had become his maze, and every corner was calibrated to feed his rifle. Above ground, chaos spread like wildfire. Alien comms lit up with urgent chatter, tones of disbelief and confusion. Their leader was dead. Their second-in-command, gone. No enemy detected. Drones deployed, eyes in the sky scanning heat signatures, infrared, ultraviolet spectrums. Nothing, only cold stone and silence. In the mobile command skiff parked 2 blocks away, Captain Vural slammed his clawed hand against the console. "Identify the shooter." "No visual," replied his tech officer, voice tight. "No heat trail. The shot must have come from everywhere," Vural growled. "Ghost tactics." He'd heard whispers from lower sectors. Claims a human specter, a phantom marksman who bled aliens 1 bullet at a time. Ridiculous, he'd thought. Earth was done. Their military shattered. But now he couldn't deny the evidence. 2 of his most experienced field officers, dead in moments, with no sign of the attacker. It felt less like war, more like ritual. The aliens began to double patrols. Groups moved in tighter formations, weapons raised, optics scanning every rooftop and alley. Some suggested orbital strikes to flush the sniper out. But coalition policy forbade such wasteful bombardments on pacified worlds. Earth was to be reclaimed and repurposed, not glassed. It suited Eric just fine. He sat in a makeshift observation room deep within the bones of a ruined subway station. Screens flickered around him, feeds hijacked from Coalition recon drones. He watched the aliens scramble. Some barked orders, others checked their armor seals obsessively. The fear was setting in, slow and suffocating. It was always the same. First the jokes, then the silence, then the screams. He removed his helmet for a moment. His face was gaunt, skin dusted with soot and grime. Blue eyes scanned the screens without blinking. A weak stubble shadowed his jaw. He looked tired. Not weak, just used. Worn like old stone, still sharp. A photo was tucked into his chest armor, dog-eared and faded. His SEAL unit. Smiling faces. All gone now. Burned alive during Earth's fall. He was the last. Eric slid the helmet back on and stood, stretching limbs that had grown stiff from patience. There was work to do. The next patrol was already sweeping into Zone Delta. 12 targets. He calculated, checked ammunition. He had enough. Barely. Above ground, a new squad entered the kill zone, laughing nervously, joking louder than before. It was false bravado. Their commanders told them to keep morale up, to remind each other that no human could possibly stand alone against Coalition might. And somewhere far above them, in the quiet shadow of a broken world, a sniper leveled his scope and waited. The bodies were recovered at dawn, what was left of them. Burnt tissue, shattered helmets. The remains of command chip fused to bone. The medtechs worked in silence, their usual jokes and bravado choked by the stench of fear hanging over the streets like low fog. No one spoke about aloud, but the truth crept in around the edges of every sentence, every wary glance at the ruins. Captain Vural stood over the remnants of his lieutenants, jaw tight, spines twitching along his neck in a rhythm he couldn't control. These were not the deaths of soldiers caught in fair combat. These were surgical, deliberate, and humiliating. One shot to the cerebral cortex, another through the throat vent at a diagonal angle, impossible for most unless pre-calculated, unless personal. He turned to his second-in-command, a stoic Zavari tactician named Rel. Pull the rest back to Zone Gamma. Tight formations. No one moves without ECM cover. Rel nodded, her compound eyes scanning the rooftops as if expecting death to materialize from the shadows. If this is the sniper they whispered about, we are no longer hunting. We are prey. Eric Thorne heard every word to the encrypted channel he cracked 3 nights ago. His listening post, cobbled from alien parts and human resilience, flickered with garbled transmissions and troop movements. Coalition tech was advanced, but it hadn't been built with improvisation in mind. Eric had learned how to break their signals by studying their arrogance. He didn't just anticipate their moves. He shaped them. He watched the latest squad move into the heart of New Boston. 12 soldiers in overlapping diamond formation, heads swiveling like birds stalked by a hawk. The tension radiated off them like heat. Their exosuits pulsed, shifting hues in response to potential threats, but none of their sensors could see him. Eric knelt behind the corroded shell of a once luxury transport van, half buried under years of debris and time. His rifle rested steady on a concrete brace wrapped in scavenged rubber to mute any vibration. He didn't rush the shot. He never did. His breath synced with the rhythm of falling leaf drifting beside him. When it touched the ground, he fired. One soldier fell forward like his strings had been cut. The shot punched through his helmet and out the back of his head, embedding deep into the metal wall behind him. Blood sprayed across the squad's front line. The formation broke immediately, some diving for cover, others firing blindly into nearby windows. The second shot followed half a second later, catching a rear gunner as he attempted to activate a drone beacon. The round severed his arm and buried itself in the wall-mounted relay unit, killing the signal before it could broadcast. By the time the third shot struck, the unit had disintegrated into disarray. Screams erupted. One alien dropped his weapon and bolted, only to be cut down by his own officer's warning shot. Eric didn't shoot that one. Fear was its own contagion. Within minutes, the survivors retreated behind a barricade of shattered vehicles and rebar, dragging their wounded with them. They didn't speak. They simply stared upward, rifles trembling, scanning the horizon for ghosts. In the sewers below, Eric moved again. He never stayed in one place more than a few minutes after a shot. The city was a map etched into muscle memory now, a labyrinth of tunnels, hidden ladders, and forgotten maintenance shafts. Every kill zone had 3 exits. Every perch had backup escape paths and noise-masking routes. His traps weren't elaborate, they were efficient. Noisemakers made from old Earth radios. Thermal dummies shaped from wet clothing and stolen power cells. The Coalition had their satellites and drones, but Eric had become something simpler and harder to kill. Silence made flesh. 2 hours later, a new team descended. Zorth Recon, bioengineered elites with quad-sight lenses and enhanced reflex responses. Eric tracked them, but did not fire. Not yet. He watched. He learned. One carried an active jammer, the other a drone swarm tucked inside a collapsible backpack. They moved too quickly, too confident in their strength. He followed them through the ruins, noting where they hesitated, where their sight lines overlapped. When they paused to scan a rooftop, Eric slipped into a drainage tunnel below their feet and emerged 3 blocks ahead, waiting. He let them think they were clever. He let them believe they were in control. And when they reached the broken plaza where Eric had staged 3 old corpses with Coalition, helmets propped on skulls, they stopped. They recognized the pattern. It wasn't just carnage. It was mockery. A message. The sniper was watching. That was when the explosives went off. It wasn't enough to kill them. Not directly. The charge beneath the fountain sent them flying, and the secondary blast disabled their jammer. In the sudden static-free burst, Eric's rifle sang again. One down, vaporized midair. The second twisted, fired, missed. A final shot ended him through the center of the chest, cracking his torso armor like thin ice. Silence followed. Up on the ridge overlooking the aftermath, Eric sat, unmoving, hidden beneath a shattered monument. He counted the seconds between the last death and the return of alien comms. They didn't speak this time. Just static. Static, and the saw from the drones flying toward the wrong coordinates. He leaned back against the stone, eyes closed. His muscles ached, but the ache was familiar. Welcome, even. He wasn't just killing for survival anymore. That had passed. Now it was justice. It was rhythm. It was a promise. The Coalition had laughed. Now they were learning. And he wasn't done yet. The command tent reeked of ozone and desperation. Cables snaked across the cracked marble floor of the repurposed City Hall, linking consoles to sensor relays and uplink towers that hummed with static. Captain Bureau stared at the tactical display, watching the growing list of dead flash crimson beside unit identifiers. Dozens of trained soldiers, incinerated or vanished within seconds. For elite squads lost in 2 days. Recon bots still reported heat anomalies, yet not one had returned with viable target imagery. He turned to the alien behind him, a Zorv veteran clad in matte black armor, tall and angular, with eyes like obsidian daggers. This was Reth Makel, a Coalition shadow operative. His kind were rumored to infiltrate bunkers through vent shafts and strangle warlords in their own sleep tanks. Now he had been called to Earth to find one man. Reth regarded the map in silence. He made no speeches. Instead, he tapped the 3 recent kill zones in succession, then dragged a claw through the dead space between them, forming a narrow corridor. He moves like water, Reth said finally, his voice cold and dry. But water has patterns. Even chaos is routine. He has territory. He's not escaping. He's hunting. Captain Vero resisted the urge to snarl. Then flush him. Bury this city if you must. Reth gave a shallow nod and turned, signaling his team of 8 to move out. They were death incarnate, genetically enhanced, cybernetically tuned, built to counter human irregulars. But none of them had ever hunted a ghost who knew every corner of his graveyard. Beneath the city, Eric Thorne sat in a dark alcove carved into the subfoundation of a collapsed museum. His hands were still, but his mind worked like a machine. The Coalition had changed their tactics. Their formations were tighter, comms encrypted deeper, movements less predictable. They were adapting, but too late. He had already mapped every likely variation of their response. The moment they stepped into the path he'd prepared, they were his. The shadows were moving through Zone Echo, the one place Eric had left unmarked, untouched. The lack of violence had lured them, and now they slinked through corridors heavy with dust and tension. Thinking they had found the eye of the storm, Reth crouched near an old subway platform, scanning a nearby alcove with multi-spectrum lenses. Nothing. No tripwires. No heat spikes. He motioned forward, but the moment his operative crossed the threshold, the ceiling detonated. The blast wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to scatter. Dust and concrete rained down, jamming filters and sensors. The shadows regrouped, but one was gone, snatched in confusion by a steel cable noose that yanked him into the dark. The others opened fire in every direction, but Eric was already gone, sliding along a maintenance conduit 2 stories above them, having mapped every sound-dampening vent, every echo path. He wasn't just in the ruins. He was the ruins. Reth barked orders. A counter-drone launched into the air with a piercing whine, only to fall inert seconds later as an EMP burst fried its core. Another agent fell, convulsing as a shock dart pierced the rear of his skull, breaching the armor's weakest junction. The last 5 converged into a defensive circle, blades drawn, optical cloaks flickering. Eric admired the discipline. It would not be enough. He didn't waste bullets on armored chests or helmets. He waited for mistakes. A foot placed too wide, a visor adjusted. When one leaned forward, Eric struck. One shot to the armpit gap, the round detonating mid-rib cage. The body fell, twitching. Reth's breathing sharpened, but he kept his focus. He scanned for patterns, entry angles, shot vectors, possible sniper nests. Then he saw it. Not the shooter, but the absence of dust on a broken beam 20 meters above. Subtle. Clever. He threw a sonic grenade, forcing Eric to withdraw. The pressure wave knocked the sniper from his perch, sending him crashing through a rotten stairwell onto the floor below. For the first time, Eric was exposed. The remaining 3 shadows closed in, fast and fluid. One dove, blade first. Eric rolled, firing a hip shot that shattered the attacker's hip joint. Another came from behind, catching him with a glancing stab that scored his armor and nicked his side. Pain flared. Eric dropped a flare, overloaded with thermite. White fire filled the room. The shadows shrieked as their visual systems burned out. Blinded, they flailed, and Eric struck. 1, 2, precision shots to the throat and face. Only Reth remained, his mask blackened, breathing labored. They faced each other across the ruined stairwell, shadows dancing between them. "You're not a man," Reth hissed. Eric steadied his rifle, bleeding from his side, but unshaken. "I was." Then your war came. They fired at the same moment. Reth's plasma bolt seared Eric's shoulder. Eric's round went through Reth's left eye. When the body hit the ground, Eric stood still, swaying slightly. He looked at the dead operative, then turned to the wall-mounted camera unit he'd known was watching. A coalition relay drone had recorded the whole encounter, his ambush, his tactics, the deaths. He left it there, broadcasting. Hours later, the video circulated through encrypted alien channels. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others watched in silence. The sniper was no longer rumor. He was real, and he had faced the best and won. Back in the cathedral, Eric cleaned his wound in the dark. His breath was ragged, but his hands were steady. He didn't patch the pain. He welcomed it. Pain meant he was still in the fight, still a reminder that Earth had teeth. He pulled out the old photo again, his team, his brothers and sisters in arms. Their smiles fossilized in time. He stared at it, then slid it back beneath his armor. The city outside was quiet for now, but it wouldn't last. They would send more. Let them come. The air was heavier than usual. Not from dust or smoke this time, but tension. Thick and choking, crawling beneath the skin of every alien station in the command center. Earth's resistance was no longer a statistical anomaly. It had become a hemorrhage. Every hour brought new footage of troops ambushed, patrols gutted, drones blacked out mid-flight. The name Eric Thorne had not been spoken officially, but it lingered in every report, each hesitant command, every unspoken fear. General Colden, the ranking officer for the Eastern Occupation Zone, stood before the flickering holographic display that pulsed over cracked marble floor. His heavy armor, ceremonial and battle-worn, felt heavier with each passing loss. Entire sectors had turned red, dozens of units lost. Officers executed with single, clean shots. And worst of all, no trace of the killer. No heat signatures. No drone footage. No pattern that held for more than 2 days. Just death. Precise. Relentless. Unanswerable. "He wants something," said Aerolith, his senior strategist. The tall, silver-skinned tactician moved with serpentine grace, eyes glowing faintly as he studied the map. He could have destroyed more by now, but he's sending a message. Each target is higher rank, each assault more daring. Kolden's jaw tightened. Then we speak his language. If death is his currency, let's give him something he can't ignore. They prepared the bait with surgical cruelty. 2 human captives, one a resistance fighter, the other a civilian sympathizer, were bound to an old power relay tower in the heart of Zone Theta, surrounded by plasma mines, sniper nests, and cloaked patrols. A full quadrant was redirected to ensure total surveillance. Live feeds were established. The broadcast was made on open human and coalition channels, unencrypted and loud. Eric was already listening. He watched the feed from an underground chamber sealed by collapsed concrete and time. The prisoners' faces flickered on the broken screen. Bloodied, defiant, framed by cracked steel and buzzing power lines. He didn't need orders. He didn't need a reason. The moment he saw them, something ancient settled into his bones. It wasn't rage. Rage was noisy. This was colder, cleaner, a function of identity, not emotion. They had drawn him into the open with symbols of suffering. They wanted the ghost to bleed. He would show them how a ghost fights. The battlefield was a theater, and they had rehearsed their script. But Eric had read it ahead of time. Every rooftop, every patrol route, every blind spot had been mapped. He didn't go through the sewers or rooftops. They expected that. He scaled the underside of an old monorail line, claws fixed to boots and gloves, moving like a silent insect above their vision. At 0300 hours, the first lights flickered. Coalition lenses scrambled briefly, as if blinking against fog. It lasted only seconds, but it was enough. One technician disappeared from his post. No gunfire, no screams, just a flicker in the darkness, a vanishing. Then, the tower's defense turrets swiveled on their own. One fired into a patrol. Another turned and detonated its own power core. Panic flared as command channels filled with shouting. The enemy had hacked their own defenses. Again, in the chaos, Eric emerged, cloaked in confusion, a blur between lights. He moved like gravity had released him. One soldier fell with a silent blade through the visor. Another choked on smoke, trying to scream through a scorched throat. Eric didn't hesitate. Every step was calculated, every bullet conserved. The prisoner saw him last, shadow turned flesh, his armor dark and burn-scarred, a single red visor line across the helmet like a drawn blade. He knelt between them and cut the restraints wordlessly. The resistance fighter stood, stiff with adrenaline, gripping the sidearm Eric handed her. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't need to. The myth had walked into her chains and broken them. Eric gestured to a narrow shaft behind the power tower's base. An escape tunnel he'd spent 4 days clearing and booby-trapping for just this moment. The civilian hesitated, trembling, before nodding and vanishing into the dark with the fighter. Eric turned back toward the screams. Coalition troops, 100 strong, converged on the square. Dropships swept in from the north, unleashing squads of heavy infantry. A flame unit roared as plasma licked the air. For anyone else, it would be a suicide trap. But Eric Thorne had planned for more than escape. He activated his final failsafe. High above, the old monorail line groaned. Charges laced along its spine detonated in succession. Tons of steel and glass crashed down, obliterating the northern advance. Drones fell like burning birds. Half a battalion died beneath the rubble in one calculated move. And still, Eric didn't flee. He climbed the relay tower, slow and deliberate, even as plasma bolts hissed around him. He reached the top, rifle slung, tattered coalition flag gripped in one hand. The drone cameras caught him in perfect clarity. Bloodied, unbroken, standing alone in defiance. And then he spoke. His voice, distorted through damaged vox, but clear enough to cut through every feed, filled the air. You came to our world with fire and arrogance. You mocked our weapons. You erased our homes. You call us extinct. But extinction speaks no warnings. It does not aim. It does not wait. The silence held for a heartbeat. But I do, and I am not the last. He let the flag fall. It drifted slowly, landing atop General Colden's crushed transport, still smoking. Eric vanished once more into fractures of the city. In the days that followed, the footage spread across warships, council chambers, alien colonies. It played on screens both military and civilian, and with each view, the fear grew. They had laughed at the idea of a human sniper. They had mocked the ghosts in the ruins. Now they gave him a name: Death's Advocate, the Silent Reaper, the Ghost of Earth. But on Earth, his name was still Eric Thorne, and somewhere in the dark, he was loading his next shot,